Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today is a wonderful guest that I talked with in early 2000. Her name is Judith Wright. She is considered to be energetic, charismatic, and a very engaging speaker, as well as somebody that's just a lot of fun to talk with. Her newest book is The Soft Addiction Solution. We're going to learn how that we can break free of the seemingly harmless habits that keep us from living the life that we want. She's also the co-founder of the Wright Institute, or Wright Graduate University for the Realization of Human Potential, and she's joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today to tell us how we can actually break these habits that keep us bound from the way that we want to be. Judith, welcome back to the Beyond 50 radio program.
I'm glad to be with you again. Thanks.
What have you been up to for the last 15 years?
Quite a question. Well, I got my doctorate. We started a graduate university. I've written another book and with my husband, and we have another book coming out in February. So a lot's been happening.
Well, I can imagine that. I mean, over 500 radio stations, 80 television programs, and we're talking 2020, Oprah, Good Morning America, the whole gamut here. So a lot of people are really interested in the appeal that you have here with something that really seems quite simple, but yet can be very complex for people, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this whole thing about, how do we really live a great life and what gets in the way of that? And one of the big barriers we found is what the term that we coined of soft addictions, those seemingly harmless habits like watching too much TV or getting stuff on Facebook or over-shopping or too much sports, those common everyday activities that we all do, but we don't realize how often we overdo them and the cost they have in our life. They really do rob us of time, money, energy, intimacy, all kinds of things that could be adding to the quality of our life instead.
Now, what do you think is the reason that we have these soft addictions? Is it because we're trying to avoid something? Are we trying to patch up the pain from feeling as we go to do those things that we really want to do? In your experience, what is it?
Well, I think you just named one of the big reasons right there. It's really difficult for many of us, most of us actually, maybe all of us, to be with our strong feelings, or fear, hurt, anger, sadness, sometimes even too much joy. We don't know how to be with that, and we unconsciously kind of numb that. So that's one of the big reasons, and we don't realize it. We're just trying to get more comfortable, feel better in some way, but we're actually doing a little more numbing and damaging to ourselves than we know. And I think another thing what I realized is that soft addictions kind of are masking something deeper for us. So we have these surface cravings. You're like, have to get an email right now. I got to eat a cookie. I got to buy that dress or whatever. Underneath that craving or that surface want, there's a deeper hunger, and that we oftentimes aren't feeding that deeper hunger and really getting it sated, and we keep grabbing these surface things instead, thinking that that's going to satisfy us, and it never does. So we might want to check our email. We got to do it right now. We got to get on Facebook. We got to whatever. But really underneath that, maybe there's a deeper hunger, a deeper yearning really to connect or to be in contact with others, and that's in Facebook. Nothing wrong with that, but sometimes you overuse that rather than doing face-to-face, which would really meet that deeper yearning, that deeper hunger. And until we really focus on meeting those deeper hungers, we're really susceptible to these kind of counterfeit pleasures, and they can't really satisfy us, so we keep going back to it again and again and again, but it never really touches what it is we really, really need deep inside.
So it sounds to me like it's something we put there because there is it sounds like we're kind of avoiding things, aren't we?
Yeah, we really are. We're avoiding our feelings, avoiding maybe a little deeper inquiry into what we really need and what we really yearn for deep inside. We're and we're just trying to manage our moods a lot of times. Hey, maybe I can get a little sugar, I'll get a little pick-me-up, or gosh, you go to make that tough sales call and I'm scared, so all of a sudden I'm eating a bag of chips or something, rather than dealing with the legitimate fear or the anxiety, the anxiousness or the concern that we have.
Now, it's really interesting when you think about how much the landscape has changed out there since the last time you and I talked. Yeah. I mean, the Internet itself was just a new thing.
No, it's really been amazing. What a huge change in it.
And so when you talk about soft addictions, that has changed quite a bit, as you'd mentioned, Facebook, or we get on Twitter, whatever the case is, but how much time we spend on social media kind of putting our best selves out there, but realizing we really don't have to step forward and claim and really be that, sort of a thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of, at one level maybe that's good for us to look at what we do want to be and how we want people to perceive us, but the real important thing is to develop ourselves in that way and to become that, to present ourselves in the real world. I mean, it's not like computers are wrong or bad or social media is bad. It can really serve a lot of purposes. It can help us make quicker contact with people. We can share a lot of logistical information. We can keep in touch with people that we might not have otherwise. So it has a purpose. But if we're overdoing that and we're really not developing ourselves and developing our relationships real time, then we're really missing out. And you're right, this last 15 years has been an explosion. I mean, I think we've had soft addictions probably since time began. I mean, it could have been like my great-grandmother, I think, over-crocheted, over-knitted, whatever that was, or people gossiped or things like that. But the temptations now, oh my gosh, with social media and all the goods we have available to us, all the stuff we can buy, more disposable income, it's really, really difficult to manage all this.
Now, first of all, for our listeners out there, we've kind of touched a little bit on what a soft addiction is. It can be a myriad of things. It could be somebody who goes to Starbucks every day. They like to get that mocha, with all the extras and spend about anywhere from $5 to $7. Anybody knows that's about a cup of coffee right there. But you can see how a soft addiction like that could keep you from buying a home.
Yeah, it's really true. I had somebody, they're saying, I can't go on vacation. I don't have money to take a vacation. I said, oh, boy, that's tough. And then we looked at her Starbucks bill for the year. It was plenty of money to go on a vacation. She had at least $3,000 and more probably, that she then started to earmark to do something that she'd enjoy more than just an expensive cup of coffee.
Now, when it comes to addictions in your experience, why do you believe we have them in the first place? What really motivates an addiction?
Well, there's a lot of it, right, and there's a lot of great research now that kind of helps us see what that is. I think that there is this, what we call it, is this deeper yearning. We really do have these deeper yearnings, and I want to name those because this is where they get confused, because I think they're human and they're really these things we're trying to seek to satisfy, but these yearnings are like the yearning to love and be loved, the yearning to connect, to be seen, to be heard, to be known, the yearning to matter, the yearning to make a difference, the yearning to be affirmed, the yearning to really manifest ourselves, to make a difference. Those kinds of things are those deep yearnings of every human heart, and I think that is like this wonderful motivation we have inside of us, but we haven't been trained or we don't know how to meet those directly, so we have this kind of motivation, this impulse in us, but then we grab something else. So we yearn to connect, but we just reach out to social media rather than reaching out with our heart. We yearn to make a difference or to be seen or be affirmed in some way, and we get confused and we buy a designer outfit, so then maybe somebody will notice us or see us, rather than really learning how to tend to that deeper yearning. So I think the motivation is there. It just gets attached to the wrong things that never can satisfy us. And then because it can't satisfy us, that's why it becomes addictive. In fact, in the neuroscientists now, they found we have these two pleasure centers in our brain. One of them is more this craving-wanting center that's fueled by dopamine, which is a short-lived fuel. We need it for motivation, but it doesn't last. And the moment that kind of goes, it's like I'll buy a new pair of shoes and there's a thrill for a period of time and then it's gone. So that dopamine doesn't last very long. It can't satisfy us. So then we keep trying to get more. So we buy more, do more, get back on social media again, get on eBay. We try to keep doing that, but it can't get satisfied. However, there is another yearning center of our brain, what we call the yearning center. They call the satisfaction center. That when we really do meet those deeper yearnings, it's like there's this beautiful, this lovely, satisfied pause, this sense of kind of almost contentment or bliss that actually is complete and doesn't lead to further addiction. We might want more of something like that, but it doesn't have that craving, compulsive quality to it.
That's so very well said. It made me realize there was a show that I did a couple of years back with a couple of gentlemen out of UCLA, and they had written a book called The Happiness Code. And the exploration of the book was to find out, is it possible to be sustainably happy? And I think when you take a look at the work that you've produced here, that a lot of us believe that that's a pursuit that we can have. But we all know the roller coaster of life. It isn't always happy. It's not always blissful. No. I even remember a young woman who was going to church for several months finally came to me one day, frustrated, feeling, I go to church every Sunday, but I don't feel any happier. And the only question I could ask her is, what made you think going to church was going to give you that? Yeah. And I think that there is that message that's been out there for a long, long time now that tells us that sustainable happiness is possible, but you must be doing something wrong, so you can almost see the sabotage that occurs before you ever get started.
Oh, that's so well put, and it's so wrong, because it's not really possible. I don't mean that we can't be satisfied. We can, and that we can live what some of the scientists now, they call it flourishing or eudaimonics, that sense of having a satisfied, meaningful life, not happy, gay, ha-ha all the time, but a sense that your life matters and that you're growing and you're learning and you're developing, and it's not about being perfect and it's not about being high happy. But you're right, that's a real setup because it's not possible. But there is something that we can do, and I think another part of this that I've discovered for myself and also in our work is the importance of really developing our emotional intelligence, our relationship with our emotions, to be able to deal with our emotions in a way that rather than thinking that there's something bad that I'm sad, that sadness is actually a loss of a pleasure that I'm experiencing. It's a beautiful human emotion that if I can sob my big cries and those big snotty cries and let that go, then there's actually a sense of peace that comes after that, rather than trying to avoid those feelings. And to say that, if I'm sad, then I can't be happy. If I really admit the truth of it, there's times when I've given into that and let go that there's actually I don't know that I'd say happy, but there's a calm and peace and rightness about that, letting go, rather than thinking there's something wrong because I'm sad or there's something wrong with me. No, that's part of being human, and that feeling needs to be embraced just like every other one.
I completely agree. I know when it comes time to pursuing a life that people want or goals that people deem to be those worthy, very life-fulfilling goals, that you can find yourself in a soft addiction as you go into the unknown quite a bit. Isn't that true?
Oh, gosh, you worded that one really well, too, Dan.
Well, I had good training from you and Bob years ago, so.
But it really is. Really, life to be fulfilling, we have to step into the unknown. In fact, that's what I found with my research. So I was really studying people who live great lives and people who, they wouldn't necessarily be someone you'd know publicly, although they included that, but it's people who have a great sense of themselves, a self-respect. They have satisfying, intimate relationships. They have worthy pursuits they're doing. They're having success in their work and their careers and their vocation. They tend to be leaders and making a difference in their community. And it doesn't mean that everything goes well for them all the time. But what happens, what we found was in common, there's these certain phases that they go through, these certain things that they experience. But one of them is that they're always that there's a dedicating phase, which is probably the one that really makes the biggest difference. They're always choosing to grow. They're always choosing the next challenge, not just as a goal to prove that they're okay, but to develop themselves, to make some of the hard growth choices over the easy ones sometimes, so that they're stretching themselves. Which means then they're always going into the unknown at some level. They take a bigger risk at work. They tell a deeper truth in their relationships. They're more vulnerable with their children. They're going into that unknown space, and that is really scary to do something you've not done before, something that's risky, something that may not turn out, something you can't predict. Yet that's really where the joy is. In fact, the existential philosophers I found really define this well. They talk about stepping into the unknown. We have this existential anxiety, like, oh my gosh, the fear of the unknown. However, if we don't do that, we have ontological guilt, kind of that sense of, oh, shoot, I missed an opportunity, maybe I should have taken that step. So there's a bind, but they do say that if we step into that unknown, into that existential void, into that existential anxiety, then we have the possibility of experiencing what they call existential freedom and existential joy. And I think that's this bind we have. Are we willing to embrace our fear, and it's not like it's going to go away, embrace our fear and step into the unknown where creativity happens, where satisfaction occurs, where we learn and grow, our brain is happier, it kind of wakes up, and it's learning and stretching, because that's really where fulfillment is. And so most of us think it's doing what's already safe and familiar, but that's actually kind of deadening.
And that's so true, and I like that you brought that up about how we need to step into the unknown. As my own partner says, I believe in getting or acquiring a new skill every 6 months.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, because it stretches you, yeah.
It really does, and the funny thing about it is that you can know, and I like that you brought this up, because here's where a soft addiction, I think, occurs in a lot of us, is that soft addiction to be sure that the conditions are right, or that I have the best of whatever I need to implement what it is I want to achieve. And if I can't have those two things met, I won't get started in the first place.
Oh, that's so harmful.
So you find yourself always in a search for that, don't you?
Gosh, it's so true. I mean, I'm a kind of one of my soft addictions was perfectionism. I certainly still have it. So I've had to really watch that, because then I don't want to do anything unless I'm sure I can do it really well. But if I'm doing something new I've never done before, how likely is it I'm going to do it well? There's always, it's like, duh. There's a real learning curve with that. And, there's some Nobel Prize-winning research, economic research, by Kahneman and Tversky, and they talked about people investing, and I think it's the same in life, but it's called loss aversion. Loss aversion meaning that we're so afraid of losing something, and that we're much more aware of the possible pain of losing something than we're aware of the possible gain and the happiness and joy that would bring us. We're more fixed on the fear of, what if I do it wrong? What if I'm embarrassed? What if it screws up? What if I lose what I have? Rather than, wait, what if I become who I could become? What if I do what I've never done before? We don't use that possible joy to motivate us. We're just kind of hanging on to what was. And that's really a deadening life. That's where we get burned out. That's where we feel drained. That's where life feels like kind of like that old movie, like Groundhog Day, where everything's the same, rather than an exciting adventure, which is the way more important way to live. But because it's so scary and all that anxiety, like, all it comes up, we grab a donut rather than grabbing the golden ring in our lives.
And I think it's really interesting when you talk about loss prevention. For some reason, Thomas Edison came to mind for me during that time, and I remember there was a period of time that I had sort of an attitude against Thomas Edison. I'm like, this guy's being hailed as this great inventor, when in reality it was a lot of people that worked under him that created these inventions, but he took claim to them, unlike Westinghouse, who actually gave credit to people that actually gave it. He was notorious. He was upset about the whole situation with Tesla and how he was being cut out of a lot of money because of electricity, with the AC current and so forth. And you could see that. But then one night I happened to pop into PBS, and they were doing a documentary on Thomas Edison, and it shed a whole new light on who this man really was. When it came to perseverance and persistence, that guy's picture should be in the book of the dictionary, right next to those words. Now take a look, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because, A, we're talking about how people try to avoid loss by not doing anything at all, or, that failure potential. Here was a guy that after losing, all the millions that he did because they decided DC was just, not as viable as the AC current, he almost lost everything, as far as his investors and all that. And then it came to a point that he kind of walked away and said, okay, whatever, I've lost this battle. Then he invented film. Then he created this whole town that was based on producing film. So this guy was how Hollywood came to exist. Then that whole town, for the most part, burned to the ground. Then he just rolled up his sleeves and he goes, okay, what's next? And finally decided to retire into his early 80s. That's when he finally decided, okay. But you could see that look in his face and that smile like he had lived a life worth living. And I bring this up because when it comes to people, geez, that word risk, I don't know, I might lose something. You don't really ever lose when you take action, do you?
No, it's really true, and you learn lessons, you take action, you move on, your new decisions are informed from the past. It really, there's like nothing we can't learn and grow from. There really is no loss if we use every situation we run into well. I mean, I'm sure he licked his wounds in some ways, and I'm sure he learned from what he did, and he moved on, and look at what happened out of that. He went places he never would have gone, and all of us benefit from that. I mean, it's a beautiful story. I didn't know all those pieces. I'm so glad to have heard it from you, and how important it is. They're just really, it's just not the end of the world to make a mistake. It's not the end of the world even to be humiliated. All those things that we're afraid of are better to be faced and dealt with, because they actually can lead us to more creativity, more relationships, more support, more help. I mean, what's the alternative? If you just, we've all had betrayals or upsets or disappointments. I mean, we can be bitter about it and complain and grouse about it our lives, or we can, hopefully learn from it and move on. And where I can understand people's upset, I have a lot of empathy for that at these things. If he'd given in at any one of those points, oh my gosh, it's hard. It's really terrible to think about.
Yeah,
it's so important, and that's what I found in the research also. It's that dedicating phase. That people that there was perseverance. They they would falter for a bit, or they might coast for a bit, but then they'd get back at it. And that getting back at it, that resilience, is really important. But if we're numbing that upset with our soft addictions, which is so easy to do, then we don't necessarily rally ourselves to do what it is that we need to be doing. You know, there's another kind of Thomas Edison, just a little loose thing I wanted to share, but it relates to the work I found in soft addictions. I visited I don't know if it was his original lab or reproduction of his laboratory. So it showed, all the tables and all the things all the guys were working on. But there was like a pipe organ in the back of this big workspace. And what is the pipe organ doing here? Well, it turns out that the guys would, and I think it was mostly men, so I'm using guys, they would go work long stretches of time just trying to solve a problem or fix something or whatever, and they'd go late into the night, but they knew it was important that they had some creativity or had some fun to keep the process going. So somebody would sit down at the organ, they'd play these songs, and they'd sing, and then they'd go back to work. And there was a woman who had a boarding house where many of the workers stayed, and she'd serve them pie at 2 in the morning or whatever it was. But that actually is really important, because one of the things we found with dealing with soft addictions is not about depriving yourself of pleasure. It's actually, most of us are already feeling deprived. That's why we're grabbing all these things. If we can really fill our lives, we call it the math of more. If we can fill our lives with the things that really bring us more pleasure. For them, it was the singing and the camaraderie and a little piece of pie, whatever that was. That gave them more ability to go back with a rejuvenation and creation in that way. So what we found is that when people really start filling their lives with things that really satisfy them, whatever that is, if it's beautiful music, a walk in the woods, holding hands with your honey, going to a movie, singing, whatever it is that really satisfies you, the more we do that and we meet those deeper yearnings that we have, the less likely we are to indulge in the soft addictions that almost kind of drift away because they're not that attractive when we have all these other things that we're choosing in our lives. And most of us need a bit of a lifestyle makeover, I guess, in some ways, to add more of those beautiful things to our lives to really fulfill us so that we can then create more, work more, have more depth and intimacy in our relationships.
Now, I know that over the many years that you've been out there helping thousands to be able to break their soft addictions, to be able to realize their potential and to actually step into the realm of fulfilling that potential, that you must have had some incredible stories about people who have been able to turn around their lives.
Well, it's really a beautiful thing. It's really one of the huge blessings of the work that we get to do, all of my husband and myself and all of our faculty and our foundations and all of our students. It's really something because I get to, story after story, but just simple ones that just a soft addiction focused one. There was one fellow that he was addicted to video games. He was just playing computer games, video games. There's just a lot of time spending doing that. And he knew, it became a problem. His wife was really upset with him. He was falling behind at work. He didn't get promoted. All kinds of things were happening. And he took it on, and he started using the skills that we have in the soft addiction solution and some of the ones we put into actually started living more according to these deeper yearnings that we put more into our other book, the Transform book. I'll tell you about that in a bit. And he started working it. And what happened is he started, he cut down on some of the time that he was spending on these games and things, but more importantly, he added things to his life. He added playing more sports, which is something that helped him feel more directly engaged in life rather than just in a simulation. He started spending more time with his boys, and that he found he'd been kind of scared to be with them in a way. He didn't really know how to play with them, and they found ways to engage together. He made a weekly date with his wife, and they went out and really enjoyed being together. And all of a sudden, he didn't want to play those games. He was playing the game of life more fully, so he wasn't so interested in these other games then because he was in the real game. And what happened, he stopped. That just diminished. It wasn't even of interest to him. His relationship with his wife became so much more intimate. He became a much better father. He lost 40 pounds, and that isn't even what he was setting out to do, but he just was so much more satisfied, and he wasn't sitting around this way. And he got promoted at work. So just making those changes made these huge differences. And I see this all the time. People putting their energy into things that really matter, talking more deeply and truthfully with their loved ones, spending time in the ways that really fill them. So what happens, you don't just get rid of the soft addiction. What happens is you start feeling better about yourself. Oftentimes people are healthier, they lose weight, they have more intimacy in their relationships, they're more productive in their jobs and their work because they're more conscious, they're more focused, they have more energy. So it has these huge reaching effects, and it just leads to such much more beautiful life that I think we all deserve.
Well, I think it also hits on something that's very valuable, and this goes back to the two gentlemen I was talking about earlier with their book, The Happiness Code, is that they said that people who become sustainably happy, we're talking about deeply and long-term, that doesn't mean they don't suffer loss or emotional turmoil as well. That's going to occur to all of us.
Yep.
But they said it's putting things out there in front of you that you can look forward to. And when you think about something like that, like acquiring a new skill, let's say it could be you've decided to learn how to fix your own car because you're tired of spending the money to have somebody else do it, and that you begin to achieve those things and you think, what can I do next now? What is that next thing on that horizon? You start looking ahead, and I think that there is just one of those marvelous turnarounds where you can keep yourself sustainably happy, and that was something that they had shown in their research, and that made so much sense. I thought, you remember as a kid, when your parents planned for you to go to the company picnic, or there was a barbecue, or you were going to the fair, or whatever, it was always something you had to look forward to, and I think, and share this, please, in your experience, that people who have a lot of these soft addictions really don't do that kind of planning or have that kind of a lifestyle, do they?
No, it's very much in the moment. You're kind of grabbing what's there to kind of deal with your mood, and you're not looking too much toward the future in a way. In fact, they found that there's this thing, the ancient Greeks called it something, they have acrasia. Acrasia means that we know there's things that are good for us to do and we don't do them, and we do things we really know aren't good for us and we do them anyway. Well, I'm sure all of us can admit to moments of acrasia. But they found out that one of the things is we have some distorted thinking, distorted decision-making. They call it time inconsistency. So what happens, if you and I were planning our grocery list for next week, chances are we'd put on it some organic meats or healthy vegetables or whatever, some good for you kinds of things. However, if we're going to go to the store right now, we're likely to buy chips and frozen pizza. So, it's like, and I noticed after I read this, I was like I have an e-reader, so I have all these wonderful books, beautiful literature all loaded up, and I'll go on a trip. I've got my e-reader with me. I'm already in the airport. And then I'm in the airport, and I am tempted by every magazine and pulp fiction that's in the, I just want to buy that, and I'm not thinking about this wonderful literature I have on my e-reader. But that happens to a lot of us in the moment. We just want to kind of control our mood, and we forget about what it is that's in the future. But I think we need to put things that are, I don't know that any of us look forward to organic meats in our future. But,
no, I don't think so.
We do need to look forward to things, and really look at what do we enjoy doing. I mean, I think that my husband and I we enjoy our moments. We really work hard on spending time and making sure that we do things. But we have a standing date every Wednesday morning where we ride our bikes or work out together, go for a walk, and go to breakfast and talk. And even though that's something I look forward to that every single week, that I have this beautiful, and we spend more time than that, but that's a very precious, carved-out period of time. And for our couples work, for all of our couples, everybody, there's kind of a requirement. You have a date a week. Well, that gives you something to look forward to, much less the big things like going back to school or learning something new, which is really challenging. In fact, that's what we have something we call the assignment way of living, that we're always using a growth assignment, something that's going to stretch us. It could be like we have classes that teach that. It could be just for a period of time you're asking for things. That's your assignment. But that really forces you to do things. Would you open that door for me? Could I borrow that? Would you? You can ask your boss for a raise when you have that assignment. Whatever that is, but it stretches us. And what we find out from that you were not only learning a new skill, but it's kind of scary to kind of do that. But it's also you find out how much people want to support you and how much nurturance and goodwill there is in the world that we wouldn't have discovered otherwise. Mm-hmm. So having this as something to look forward to, always growing, having these life assignments that stretch you. In fact, Abraham Maslow, who is a father of humanistic psychology, he said that every day, not even a new skill every 6 months, he would say that too, but you see, every day we should make the growth choices over the safe choices. And we should make those growth choices at least a dozen times a day. Do something, just a little bit of a stretch every day rather than just the same old every day. So there's something about looking forward to things, newness, novelty, learning, growing, living your life more adventurously, that really helps to sustain this sense of flourishing and happiness in our lives.
And I think to add to that too, Judith, is the fact that when you actually move in that direction with your life, you will have opportunities that will come along that will simply astonish you, won't they?
Well, that is so, yes, it's so true, because usually we want to kind of predict, well, this, if I have everything I need and I have a guaranteed outcome, then I'll do this. But what happens by kind of playing life this way more fully, taking more of these risks, stretching, whatever things happen, I mean, my own life is that way. Things have occurred that I just never would have imagined. So I'm so glad I didn't predict for myself. I would have limited myself. And it's kind of funny, like you find out what you can do. You find out you have capacities beyond what you thought. You can learn things, do things you never thought possible. People come out of the woodwork sometimes. Opportunities arise. It's not just magic, but there's something about creating in this way and really living that way. It's kind of amazing what you can do and what comes to you, but we would never find out if we don't get out there and experiment.
And it's funny, for a personal story here, is we have some friends, good friends, and he is a photographer, has been for many years, and that's really his dream and his passion. He goes and he carries that out the best that he can, but photography is kind of one of those things that seem like you never get paid. Everybody loves your work, but nobody ever wants to buy anything, it seems. He became astonished because we decided to get into photography, but more of filmmaking, and keeping it simple with a DSLR camera, and we have had people actually pay us to do the filming and so forth for their businesses. Oh. Now, this was something we never could have imagined, but it was an idea my wife had, and I thought, well, that could be interesting enough. But we didn't realize we would get those kind of opportunities, and we just kind of decided to do that. And he was talking with us one day, and he says, it really astonishes me that you have actually found people that pay you for the short time that you've been doing this. Well, we didn't know any better. And it just kept coming, and he was like, how do you guys do that? In the meantime, we put him into some really cool places, like, really high-end fashion shows, to shoot photography. He's right there at the, end of the runway. But, that's what we mean by stepping in that direction, because there's a preconceived notion you might have about, as you were talking about, the outcome. Yeah. That's where you have to really examine your thinking. You get rid of that. You don't have an expectation. You just move in that direction, and you discover that life is not only kinder, but it's tremendously more generous than you think it is. Hear.
I so agree with that, and I wouldn't have known that from just my old belief system. It's really something I've had to experience, and your story is wonderful. Like, look at those adventures, and how great that is. But it really, our belief systems are oftentimes are one of our biggest barriers, and they're oftentimes unconscious. We don't know that's what we believe, but we really limit ourselves. Like, we think, or even just our thoughts, our thinking, that won't work, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, or I'm too this, or I'm not smart enough, or that'll never work for me, or any of those negative kinds of thinking that most of us, I think probably all of us have at times, really can limit us, those belief systems, and we think they're real. I mean, it's true that we believe that, but it's not the truth of what's possible in our world. And we have to kind of test it sometimes, just like you're saying. Once you take some of those risks or try some things or ask for help or see what happens, it's been so beautiful to find out, yes, the world is more generous than I had actually thought, and much less dangerous, and much more helpful, that there really is. There's more possibilities, and I'm not being kind of just idealistic about this. These are experiences that I've had, as you've just related. And, are there bad times? Yeah. Are there people that aren't so nice sometimes? Yeah. But the percentages of what you find on the other side are pretty huge. And I just wouldn't, if I had kept myself just operating from my kind of preconceived belief systems, my life would be so different. And I think also compared to that you and your friend, and it sounds like your wife was helpful and supportive, having allies is really helpful. People that encourage you rather than discourage you. People that believe in you. People that want the best for you. Or being with other people who are willing to learn and grow and risk really helps you take those steps, because you can talk yourself out of it, but it's much easier if you've got, if we can, to really seek to have other people that we can be in this game with. I'm sure that made a big difference for you, that you had, the two of you were doing it together, your wife had this idea. That's really beautiful.
It really is. And, last night as I was thinking about this segment today, I was thinking about you and Bob and realizing, You two, a lot like us, have decided to live in a way that I think a lot of people should, especially if you're going to be married. We don't go to jobs.
Yeah.
We work together. There's something, at first it can be a little difficult, but as you learn to grow and come to respect each other, you begin to count on those skills that maybe they have that you don't, but they complement what you do, so you're able to work together. It's quite a lifestyle.
Isn't it something? I just can't imagine it without it, although my husband and I had separate businesses for a period of time, and Bob wanted to work with me, and I wasn't so sure in the beginning I wanted to work with him, and my staff wasn't so sure, and he was so determined because he could see the complement that we were, and what he did is that he set out on this campaign, and for 2 years he and I fought in the service of this. He said, look, I want you to remember we're fighting because I really want to be working with you, and I want to get all these judgments or all the things that are in the way handled. I want to be able to talk about them. I want to see what those resistances are rather than just avoid them. And for 2 years, we'd tussle and struggle, and it was amazingly creative. I mean, that's what we came up with, and it's actually how we formed our whole graduate university, how we formed our whole personal transformation curriculum. It all came out of that. And to work together with him now and just part of, oh my gosh, it's like I could cry. I mean, it's like, isn't it? Because I've got it, not just a helpmate, but he's good where I'm not. He has skills that I don't have, and I can learn from him. And hopefully I complement him. I have someone to problem solve together, to come up with creative solutions. And now we have a kind of a lifelong learning community with our foundation it's for the right foundation for the realization of human potential, with many people that are on this journey together, growing and learning together and helping solve problems and create visions for one another. And it's like, wow, that's like so beautiful to me, and it makes such a big difference. But I don't know what it was like for you, but the two of us had to tussle stuff out, and of course we still do. We fight a ton, and out of the fighting, because we get in there and tell the truth and work things out. In fact, that's what our next book's about. It's called The Heart of the Fight.
There you go.
For relationships. How do you engage really fully so you can be more intimate and be closer? And those were all lessons I had to learn, and I'm so glad I'm learning them.
Either that or it could be subtitled, Becoming Less Irritated Than You Were Before with Each Other.
Or finding out what the irritation's really about, which is probably how we become less irritated. Why does it bother me so much? What does that mean to me? And handling that. Yeah, but it is. It's like, and I think I had to learn to face those things rather than be irritated and kind of walk away from it or not engage. How to let that irritation help me to engage more fully, to resolve it, and to get a more creative solution. And that's certainly something I'm still learning, but man, that's really something. And yeah, to be able to work with my husband and have a common mission and purpose is really just an amazing thing. And many people, I'm sure they say that too, like, how can you do that? We would be, what's wrong? Yeah, I can't imagine working with my spouse. I can't imagine not working with him. Although earlier in our relationship I had imagined that, and now I'm so glad I worked it through.
You might even see that something like that, too, a relationship where two people really don't want to maybe work together like that, the soft addiction could be, I love him, but I love going to work to get away from him.
Well, that's a lot of truth to it. There's really well put. There's kind of 4 categories of soft addictions. One of them are the activities, all the stuff we overdo, whether that's shopping or media or kind of overworking, those kinds of things. But there's also avoidances, the things we don't do, the stonewalling, the procrastinating, the staying at work too long so we don't have to go home to the tension. There's also then things we get addicted to, designer, consumable kinds of things, or certain food groups, that kind of stuff, and then moods and ways of being like perpetually irritable or cranky or sarcastic, or those kinds of things can be addictive. But there's avoidance, and they're all actually in all ways are kind of an avoidance. And there's many people that soft addiction people are calling workaholics. It's really they're avoiding going home. There's tension or something at home or something that you don't want to deal with. And rather than do that, they use a kind of more socially appropriate excuse of, I have to work, and rather than really face what's there. And usually when you face what's there and you learn the skills to deal with it, it can be resolved, and things that you don't have to. But the longer you avoid it, the harder it becomes to tend to it.
And the key, too, for people to understand about your book, The Soft Addiction, first of all, The Soft Addiction Solution, is that it's a workbook. You're actually going to have to roll up your sleeves and you're going to have to do some work. That's just how it works.
Yeah, but it just is how it works. If you understand brain science and neuroscience, for example, there's just no such thing as a quick fix. It's just not possible. We just don't change in that way. It takes kind of some doggedness and rolling up your sleeves, working at it consistently, growing new neural pathways of new habits. That's really what it takes. So anytime we think there's a quick fix, we're going to be disappointed. It just isn't there. It's not what it's about. However, the journey toward developing these new habits is actually really wonderful. I mean, you don't have to do it perfectly, but each day you make a little better choice. You eat 2 donuts instead of 3, whatever it is. You work out for 20 minutes rather than none, whatever. Any step you take, actually, it's so much more satisfying. You start shifting the percentages of your life, because it's living more consciously is actually what happens. Mm-hmm. You're living more awake. You're more alert. You're feeling more. You're sensing more. You're more present. Life is more precious. Things can hit you more deeply. You sense things that are more beautiful. Your emotions are more available. You can tear up at something lovely because we're not numbing ourselves. So we really can experience life more fully and enjoy it, even if we're any little percentage point we make in consciousness. Consciousness is really the win with this. We don't have to do things perfectly. It's not about kind of white-knuckling our way through something. It's just gradual, the law of little things, little step by little step by little step, and over time that can build new habits. But you don't have to wait till the journey's over to enjoy it. You're being more conscious and more awake and more aware and living your life more fully every step you take, which is so beautiful about the journey.
And you said something that I think is very poignant that people should come to see. And I remember when I was talking with best-selling author Ken Blanchard, is that he talked about, and it was something I had never heard before, even in the realm of talking with people like himself as much as I was, is that he says what we don't do enough of is celebrate little wins.
Yeah.
We're always looking for that big supercharged win. We really want that because that's the way it's portrayed to us,
Yeah,
we all sit there on the bench and then we put a little effort, we get the big win. But it really is, as you see, recognize, and begin to, I guess, appreciate those little wins, you'll realize just how many of those there really are, and that's enough motivation to keep you going by itself.
Well, and I think we need that. We need the reassurance because it's hard to kind of get it. Part of what I see even in our institute and all the courses and classes and coaching we do, I think some of our jobs sometimes as coaches is to really help people see the gains that they're making, because oftentimes you're so busy looking at the gaps, you don't see the bigness of that gutsy move there, that truth told there, or that stretch, or learning this new skill, or handling something differently today than you would have a week ago or a month ago or a year ago. Those are huge. There's no such thing as a small victory in this journey.
Right.
Anything of consciousness that's more in this direction really should be celebrated. Not to kind of smugly pat ourselves on the back and put our feet up on the coffee table and never take any other moves or anything, but to encourage ourselves. And it really is critical. Like, our system needs to know this is really a worthy pursuit. And it's so true, those small things, to really celebrate and to give ourselves credit. In fact, at the end of the year, and Bob and I do that. We do it often, but we go throughout our year and we just look at throughout the year, what did we learn this year? How did we grow? What are the gains we've made? What are the mistakes we made? What did we learn from those? And really take stock. And that's at the end of the year and beginning, and we vision for the next year. But we do that actually pretty frequently and kind of more of an ongoing basis, and give each other feedback about, I don't know, but I need those atta girls, or sometimes because I feel so vulnerable taking these big moves that I do and kind of risky for me, to have Bob say, "Oh, honey, that was so brave."
Right.
Wow, I needed to hear that. That makes a big
The
difference.
hero's journey.
It is the hero's journey.
And when you do that reflection, that's when you get to sit down with a couple of large mochas and enjoy that hot apple pie.
That sounds really good to me.
It does. Now, listen, Judith, for our listeners, where's a website people can discover more about your work and how they can get the soft addiction solution?
I'd love for them to go to judithwright.com. That's right with a W, judithwright.com. You'll also see you can download 2 free chapters of our new book, Transformed. And there's a little tab on there with all kinds of soft addiction tips and quizzes and templates and things that you can learn more about. Also, all listeners can come to a training that we do with all these skills. It's a weekend training that is totally complimentary to anyone who's listening to us right now. We used to charge $800 for it. Now it's just, we will allow you just to come and get a taste of it. If you can get to Chicago, you can come be part of that training. And all of that is on judithwright.com.
Now, are you going to be on tour at all? You're going to be in Portland, Oregon at any time soon?
We may actually, because we're planning a tour now. We're going to be touring for the Heart of the Fight book. So I'm going to put you on my list for our sites. I would love to do that.
Well, that would be great to see both you and Bob again,
I would love
certainly.
that.
I'm glad you're still doing the work. It's been a pleasure to have you back on the program, at least a different program. It was one we actually created.
I love it. I love
I'll tell you, here's an interesting story, too.
Huh.
We get this a lot, especially as we first started Beyond 50. What is it going on? 13 years now in February.
Beautiful.
And it's funny because here's what we hear a lot from people around the country that are in the radio business, especially with the podcasting. Mm-hmm. How do you guys make money doing this? Oh. Well, we do because we treated it as a business to begin with.
Yeah.
We didn't just say, let's get out there and we'll become stars and then the money will follow.
Yeah,
it's
right.
things you need to learn, but they're all learned skills as we've been talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, but good for you. Look what you did. You created something out of nothing that serves so many people.
Well, it was the only way I could get you back on the program.
Well, I'm really glad. I loved being with you the first time, and it's been a real pleasure to be with you
You
again.
bet.
I love the work you're doing. It's just a wonderful conversation.
Thank you again, Judith. And go ahead and give out that website one more time.
Okay, it's www.judithwright.com. Wright with a W, judithwright.com.
Very good. Judith, again, thank you, and say hello to Bob for me.
I will do.
All right.
Thank you.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there. So now you've got something armed for your new year so you can break the old habits that aren't serving you in the direction you want to be served and start living that life that you really want to live. You can also discover more by visiting us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter as well. You can also follow us on Twitter at Beyond50Radio as well as Facebook. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.